Hey everyone, I'm Brent Skarkey from the State Chamber. It's an election year, and we're excited to kick off a brand new interview series on OklahomaDecides.com. The site, the best way to stay up to date with the latest candidate developments in our state. The State Chamber's Chad Warmington going one-on-one with statewide office candidates to give the business community and Oklahomans a great look at what the men and women who are running for office are all about. The interview does not constitute an endorsement from the State Chamber. It's just a place where they can be heard and voters can learn more.
Pleased to be joined by Marty Quinn. Marty, thanks for coming in and spend some time talking to us.
It's my pleasure. Appreciate the invite.
I'm going to give you all a little bit of information on Marty. Marty's running for insurance commissioner. I already mentioned that, but he's a small business owner and an insurance professional. He has more than 40 years of experience in the insurance industry. And he began his career as a local insurance agent and then built up an agency serving families and businesses really across Oklahoma. He also has the unique, I don't know if it was a pleasure, if you could say, it was a pleasure to maybe serve in the legislature from 2010. I mean, it had its moments, right? Mm-hmm. From 2010 to 2022. And while he was there, he really focused on insurance policy, and he chaired the Senate Insurance Committee. He's seeking the office of Insurance Commissioner to apply his industry and legislative experience in public service. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much.
So, big picture first question is, you've got a vision for Oklahoma, otherwise you wouldn't be running. So give us your vision for Oklahoma, and then what do you hope to accomplish as insurance commissioner that ties in with that vision for Oklahoma?
Well, it's a bottom-up approach, Chad. The consumer, the taxpayer is my foundation. I think that's always very important, especially when you're talking about possible legislation, having served in the House and the Senate. But from the insurance standpoint, if you don't have the consumer, you don't have the corporations. So we want to make sure that we, for Oklahoma, and those taxpayers and those consumers, have an environment that companies can flourish, be financially stable, be able to deliver the promises that they make. And then from the consumer side, know that there's an element out of the insurance department's office that's going to have a level of protection, that if you have a bad agent, if you have a bad company, that there's people there that are watching making sure that people are abiding by those statutes and regulations that we should hold them accountable to.
Yeah, I think you've got a really unique role as commissioner. You get to balance, making sure that there's a fair system protecting businesses, and but also having a fair regulatory environment as well. So give me your perspective from the insurance commissioner's office. How do you define, one, I want to know kind of how you define free enterprise to you. What does it mean to Marty Quinn? But then also, as you think through where the government draws the line between setting fair rules and getting in the way of markets. So you're a free market guy, and then how do you balance that in your role as insurance commissioner?
I look at it from a triangular approach. You have corporations on this side, you have consumers on this side, and there's other parts, but the three main parts in that vision of triangle is you have a legal system in the middle. And it has to be a balanced approach. There's not a single person in this race that's going to have the ability to balance that any better than I do. The companies have to be able to be financially stable. The consumers have to be able to afford the product. And that legal system in the middle, if they swing the pendulum a little bit too far one way or the other, there's a cost associated with that. You swing it too far in the legal system's way, then the corporations pick up the tab and then they send that back to the consumers in the form of premium increases. But if you've got bad actors, you're glad that system is there. And so to me, that's the foundation of it. And we want to make sure that people know, corporations know, businesses know that for us to have a healthy insurance environment, it has to be competitive. We've got about 100 companies in the state that can write homeowners insurance. Only about 50 of them do. We've got to increase that. If there's people here that are in Oklahoma that can write business that are not, we need to make sure that we try to do things to invite others to the market share, because your consumer is always going to tell you whether it's a healthy market or not. And one of the things that I'm seeing on the doorstep is that now we're having consumers that are saying, I no longer can afford insurance. And it's a bad situation for us to be that people can continue to increase dropping car insurance or dropping house insurance. Not good for the real estate industry, not good for the banking industry. So we're going to make sure that we do the best that we can within the scope of the insurance department to create a healthy environment.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Kind of getting into maybe couple of specifics, really two-part question. In your opinion, what's the biggest drivers of kind of the rate increases we've seen in Oklahoma? And then the second part of that is, through some of the research we've been doing, states like Florida have found some reasonable ways to ensure that policyholders get the coverage and the claims performance that they, signed up for in their policies. So how do you think Oklahoma's insurance environment might look different if you're elected? So biggest drivers, and then what do you think will look different if you're elected and helping drive maybe some of those costs down?
Well, cost is the driver. Insurance is only going to pay for the things that it has to replace. The less expensive that those things are, then the less premium outlay that we have to cover that risk or that exposure. So if we can somehow adjust those costs. Now, the most common is from the roofing industry. And I'm a capitalist. I want people, if you're in the hamburger business, or if you're in the roofing business, you're in the carpentry business, I want you to do well. At the same time, in the insurance business, if there's more situations where people are being taken advantage of, the only place that they have to get those revenue sources is from the company, which in turn comes back and gets that money from the insureds. And so we've got to look at cost. We've also got to look at risk. So if we can improve the cost of a roof, people will talk about fortified roofing, but just the cost of shingles or just the cost of putting on roof. How big is that margin? Do we need to look at some of those things? But from a risk standpoint, we went for years with a guaranteed replacement cost on the homeowners. At one time, it meant if you insured for a house at $100,000, guaranteed replacement meant that if it cost you $250 to build it back, they were going to pay $250. Well, now those numbers have come back to most policies will have 125% is the most that they will pay. But for the longest, it was still guaranteed replacement cost on the roof, regardless of whether it was 10 years old, 20 years old, or 40 years old. So we're going to have to look at risk and exposure, but at the same time, wind up with a product that your bankers are supportive of, your mortgage companies are supportive of, real estate markets can sell the homes, and then the insured can afford the premiums and enjoy the comforts of knowing that the risk that they bought is going to help them in the worst of their times.
Is part of the risk profile that maybe is driving cost, maybe the legal exposure that insurance companies have? Do you think there's some legal reform that Oklahoma needs, or is that not as big an issue?
No, I think there's lots of components, and the legal side of it is part of that. But as a insurance agent, as a manager, as a consumer, I've been a consumer longer than I have any other job that I've had. So I've been on both sides of the desk, all the way around the desk, with my experience with insurance companies. And I've seen the best of both worlds. I've seen where I felt like that the insurance companies took advantage of the consumer until the legal system dropped in. I've also seen where the legal system, there was only so much that the insurance company could do, but the legal system stepped in and swung the pendulum too far. And that's where, Chad, that I think that trust is a huge component in this deal. Regardless of what bucket you're in, at the end of the day, you're going to have to trust the insurance commissioner to analyze the situations that are there in the environment that we're operating in. And can I trust him to be fair? Can I trust him to be honest? And I give kudos to Commissioner Mulready. I think at Glenn's core, he is a solid, moral, sound individual that has a level of truth. He knows the difference between right and wrong, and that not because of Glenn, but because of the faith and the belief that I have in the good Lord above. Is I want that to be my standard, that when you come in the office with an issue, whether you're an insured, whether you're the little old lady with no help whatsoever anywhere else, I want you to be able to call that 1-800 number and know that there's people there that want to help you. And at the end of the day, if I was able to help you, or if that department was able to help you, it was because it was the right thing. If I wasn't able to help you, it was because it was the right thing. Yeah. Whether you're a company or a consumer or a legal system in the middle. That's what I want, is there has to be a level of trust that you're going to get a fair handshake when you come into the commissioner's office moving forward.
Yeah, it makes sense. I know you mentioned some of the legislative experience you have, and I know there's potential legislation maybe even coming down the pike this session. One of the things that could be happening is adding new state entities like the Attorney General to the annual rate-setting process. What's your perspective on that proposal, maybe some others that are coming potentially this legislative session?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's enough legal eyesight on it. I believe that I'm not saying that the current system can't be tweaked. I tell people all the time, if you think that it's an option, I want to look at it. On its face value, what I'm going to work towards and prevent is that we do not want to have a system that is a California-like, that you isolate it down to one individual, that there's plenty of evidence, whether it's actuarial studies that we need to do more of, that it's market conduct surveys that we do more of. There's elements there that we can revert to where the companies, if they know that they've got a relationship of a trusting commissioner that's going to hold them accountable. Is your actuarial study, is it true? Is it actually true? And if it is, we'll work with that. I also want people to realize is just because you lost money last year doesn't mean that you have to have a rate increase. Now, you can't do that every year. But there are companies out there that are very, very, very strong financially. And in the environment that we have been in, I just want them to look at that. I'm not saying that you can't, because currently we can't tell them that they can't. But even if that was the case, we just don't want to swing that pendulum too far. And I think that the rules and the regulations or statutes or whatever that are in place right now give the AG's office plenty of options. And I think that you may have seen some of those things over the years.
Yeah.
But I'd be open to listening, put it that way.
That makes sense, and I think that's kind of part of what your pitch is that you're open to listening, you work with the legislature, you understand that process, and you're willing to hear them out if they got ideas on how to make the process better. You're all ears, and I think that's important. Shifting kind of back to a little bit, maybe a little bigger picture. For our members, we've been talking a lot about our Oklahoma Competes agenda, and our Competes agenda really is focused on trying to make Oklahoma more competitive, both regionally and nationally. Economically, how can we be more competitive? How can Oklahoma win more? Give me in a sense from in your opinion, how the Insurance Commissioner's Office can contribute to that goal of Oklahoma's long-term competitiveness.
Yeah, I think it all boils down to rate. And Chad, this is what I tell people on this time. This is not going to be a quick, politically favorable fix. Because a lot of times when you do things like that, then you wind up having long-term issues. I'll use a collaborative effort. If I get ready to make some changes, the legislature gets ready to make some changes, what's that going to do to the banking industry? What's that going to do to my real estate? What's the land title going to say to that? What is the consumer going to say? Because you can do whatever you want to with policies and procedures and processes as a company, but if that consumer doesn't like it, you don't have a company. You've got to have consumers. So I think it all goes back to us making the market more competitive. If we can make the market more competitive and still give good coverages to take care of people when they're in need, you will see a lessening of burden from the financial side. And I think that companies as a whole want that. There's only so much margin that they have. You have certain expenses. If you have money left over, it goes into investments. If you make money in investments, then you have to put so much money in reserves. And most sound companies have a lot of reserves. Well, most people don't care anything about reserves until you have the $200 million or the $5.6 billion storm, and then they want to be with the strongest company. But to answer your question, I feel like that if we long-term continue to work each and every year to make Oklahoma a more affordable market, to insure your home and insure your house, it's going to free up dollars that people have to spend in other areas of our economy.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And that's That's the role of the insurance commissioner,
Yeah.
right? So as we wrap up, you've been on the campaign trail quite a while now. You've been all over the state. Give us kind of a sense of what you're hearing out there in terms of what from a voter standpoint, their thoughts on insurance, and then just kind of wrap us up with, final thoughts on you running for commissioner.
Yeah, my answer to the rate question is we're going to work on rates. But if you hear anybody say that I'm going to lower rates, they don't have that ability. First of all, the commissioner does not have that ability, but I am going to work on that from varying angles. Whatever we need to do to try to correct that long term, that's what we want to do. But here's one of the things I think is extremely important. The consumer many times is out there all by themselves, and many of them, you ask me what we're hearing on the street, many of them do not realize that they have an avenue to the insurance commissioner's department. Older people, younger people, middle-aged people that give me stories that this is what happened to me. I asked them, I said, did you call the Department of Insurance? No. Well, why didn't you? Well, I didn't know I could. And we're going to make a definite effort. Now, I've talked to a lot of people in that area, and I know from my experience as an individual and as an agent, as a legislator, that they've done a good job. But a lot of it is awareness. Why do they not know what that 1-800 number is? Why do they not know that if they've got a bad agent that's breaking the law, that they don't automatically think about the insurance department? Why, when they truly feel like, and I'm not saying it has to be the first option, but you should not be in Oklahoma in this day and time feeling helpless that nobody can help you, especially from the Department of Insurance. And so that's no knock on our current Department of Insurance. I just think that people don't think of it until they're in that situation. And so we want to, whether it's a marketing effort or awareness effort in some form or fashion, I want to make sure that we have the technology that is needed, and I'm sure we do. I want to make sure that we have the staff that is needed, and I'm sure that we do, that there's people on the other end of that line that have a positive attitude, open arms. You let us know what we need to do. Now, is it always that easy? Sometimes people on the other end are asking for things that you can't deliver.
Right.
But that goes back to, can
Right.
you trust me or can you not?
Right, yep. Well, I don't think we could kind of end on a better note than that. I just learned a ton listening to you right now. And so I wanted to thank you, one, for being here, and for two, I thank you for stepping up and being willing to serve again. I know you did, like we talked about in the legislature, but thank you for being willing to serve in this role. We need good people in good roles, and we appreciate you putting your name on the ballot.
Thank you
for
very
being
much.
here.
Appreciate your time.
You bet.